Whereas normal PC cases have side panels and all of these separate pieces, this case just has one complete shell. What's so special about that? Well, because there are no separate panels here, there are no panel gaps, there are no creases on the outside, there's no visible screws or anything like that, and there's also no color matching issues or anodizing mismatching between the panels because it's all just one giant piece. It's called the Thorzone Nano Q. The one that I have here is the larger R variant in silver, which looks absolutely unreal in person. I have to say, it just looks supremely overkill for a PC case. There really aren't many interesting PC cases coming out these days. I just honestly skip most of them. But yeah, this is one which I've been waiting to see and build in person. The main question I have though, is the Thorzone actually better than the Ncase M2? Because I've just put them side by side here, and they're really not that different when it comes to size. Both come in around 16 liters. The Thorzone is a little bit longer while the Ncase M2 is a bit taller. But yeah, both are really trying to do the same thing, which is be an ultra premium desktop enclosure for your mini PC. But yeah, let's talk more about this Thorzone and specifically this exterior shell, which is, let's be honest, the main event here. If you're looking to buy this case, this is pretty much the reason for it. It looks unreal in person, and it is actually just one giant piece. There's no trickery or joins happening here. I'm guessing this is extruded metal, which has then been CNC'd. It's also nicely concaved at the edges, which gives it a nice kind of unique touch. But yeah, just mega overkill for a PC case, which is what makes it so special. Now, as for how you actually climb inside this thing and start building your PC, because again, there is actually no screws on the exterior at all, the interior actually slides out, and then you've got this convenient frame that you can now build your PC onto. But this is where I do have to be a little bit more critical. This exterior shell, honestly, one of my favorite things that I've seen on a PC case in a very long time, but this gliding mechanism, it needs a lot of work. Thorzone have actually been making these external shell capsule style PC cases for a few years now, and they still haven't quite figured this out. Sometimes it's a really smooth operation. Other times there's like this metal on metal contact, which is just so cringy to listen to. And then other times it just straight up gets jammed because they're using a low friction tape on the inside of the corners, which can tend to like fold on itself and just block up the entire mechanism. The one that I'm holding here actually just eventually peeled itself off. I do actually have a couple of the first batch Nano Q cases here as well, and these don't have that low friction tape on the inside, so there's no issues with it getting like jammed up or anything like that. But then on the other hand, it's just a pure metal on metal sound. It is not nice to listen to at all. Now, I did notice on the edges there are these little cylinders which I think are made of like a nylon or a really hard plastic. I think the idea is to have this low friction plastic to guide the frame on the inside of the corners. There's like a little divot on the inside of the shell as well, but they just don't do enough. And with how good the rest of the case looks, this experience of gliding the shell in and out does not match at all. What I am super impressed with though is how these two pieces lock together so that, you know, your PC doesn't accidentally slide out when you're moving it. So again, there's only one visible screw on the exterior, but this is a completely toolless mechanism. You've got these struts on the front here, and the two that are aside from the one in the center, they actually move up and down like this, and that is what locks the two pieces together. It's just one movement which locks it at both ends, which I think is pretty clever. You know, it would have been super easy just to implement a couple of screws at the back and then call it a day. But yeah, this over-engineering is something that I personally really enjoy. But what can you actually fit inside here? How good is the space optimization? Well, it's a sandwich layout, which means your motherboard and power supply are on one side and your GPU is on the other. And just like the Form T1 and the Fractal Terra, you can actually shift the interior portion to favor more clearance for either your CPU or your GPU. So the GPU clearance ranges from 2 slots up to 4 slots, and CPU cooler height ranges from 51mm up to 91mm. Let's just say we're about to make use of every millimeter available. Building in this case actually starts with the GPU, which is a bit odd, but it uses this locking plate here, which you need to screw in without the motherboard in place. But yeah, easy enough, and here I'm going with an RTX 4090 Founders Edition. And then on the other side, we're going with the Ryzen 7800X 3D plugged into the B650 Edge ITX from MSI, and that's cooled by the Noctua NHL12S. This cooler comes in at 66mm in height, and honestly, I did not know whether it would fit. I did a quick little test fit here of the external shell, and it just fits. There's literally no clearance left on the CPU side, and there's maybe 1mm left in front of the GPU. But yeah, this is super satisfying to look at. The power supply is next, Corsair SF750 Platinum, along with a custom 16-pin GPU cable from Mod DIY, which I always use for these super compact builds. Surprisingly, I was also able to offset the power supply away from the rear fan on the 4090. This way, you can just breathe a little bit better. And then finally, we've got the case fans. I've got some 140mm Arctic P14s here, which should move a ton of air, but I did have a bit of trouble with these. For some weird reason, regular case fan screws don't fit through these holes here on the case, which is super weird. Thorzone's own custom screws do, but they're not long enough for the 140mm Arctics, which I'm using here. Really hope they fix this for an upcoming batch because it just should not be a problem. So yeah, I had to use small zip ties for the top two and then double-sided tape for the front. It is super janky, I'm not proud of it, but there's not really any other option at the moment. But that is absolutely everything, and it looks super dense. A 16-liter case with hopefully some unreal performance as well. The exterior shell, by the way, does tend to catch on the GPU cable and the riser cable, but so long as you guide them through, there's not too much of a problem. As for the temperatures and the cooling, this actually turned out a lot better than I was expecting. This isn't advertised as a very high-performance, ultra-optimized PC case or anything like that. The side panels are not super breathable, as you can see, but I'm guessing the fact that you can install 3 140mm exhaust fans in this thing just offsets that difference. Both the CPU and GPU side get their own isolated cool air through the side panels, which is immediately pulled out of the case through the top and the front. Those 140mm Arctic P14s are no joke. With a room temperature of just below 20 degrees C, the 4090 was topping out at roughly 66 to 67 while drawing 400 watts in Cyberpunk using the ray tracing ultra preset with no DLSS. The 7800X3D was also sitting around that same level, which is also pretty typical, and this was with the case fans set to just 1100 RPM. You won't get this level of performance, however, if you go with a top-mounted liquid cooler, since you'll be blocking a lot of that GPU exhaust airflow with a radiator. You'll also have to use less powerful fans. The 7800X3D here anyway has plenty of cooling with that L12S. So if you're planning on building in this thing, yeah, I can highly recommend this setup. Now, if you're wondering why I've been so picky about this thing, it's because of the price. I mean, you just take one look at this thing, you know it's going to be expensive. It is really expensive. 360 euros is what this one costs, which is the bigger model here. That does include free shipping, but man, I mean, still, that is very, very expensive. That's pretty much double what an Ncase M2 costs, even after you factor in shipping to most regions out there. So look, if it's my money, I'm sticking with an Ncase M2. It's way more optimized in terms of layout options, the build quality is the best on the market, undisputedly, and the user experience does seem to be thought of a little bit more. But at the same time, if you're already building with like a 4090, it is very easy to take one look at this thing and be convinced in a heartbeat, because there's no other PC case that looks like this.